I like when you do the countdown.
Okay, okay. Three, two.
Welcome to the Mentally Fit Athlete podcast. My name is Lydia Garcia. I'm joined by Dr. Jason Von Steets. And today we've got an exciting topic for you. We're talking about refocusing for athletes after you've maybe started down a little bit of a spiral.
Yeah, this is a really common, well, it's a common occurrence. It's a common question from athletes, from parents of athletes. How, if you're a parent, um, once my child, my sweet precious baby, is on the field and they start to get rattled, how do they get back on track? How do they prevent themselves from sort of mentally spiraling? Or if you're an athlete, you might think, once I face that setback, how do I get back on track? How do I refocus after something goes wrong and stop myself from just getting into a slump or getting into um, a bad place where I'm not performing as well. So it's a great question, and it's a little bit hard to answer. It's sort of like you know. If you're an MMA, I remember I'm a little bit older, so I remember when the UFC was first starting to get popular, and then people would ask, "Well, how once someone gets you in a rear naked choke, how do you get out of it?" Ooh, try not to get into it. Like once you're in that
Yeah, once
really
you're there,
bad
you're
spot.
there.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're going to talk about. So you can get out of that spiral once it's starting, but it's really hard. And the real answer is use your mental skills, use any tools you have to notice that you're starting to spiral, and then do your best to not spiral. So that's if our whole episode is too long didn't read, that's the short version. But is there anything you want to get us started with, Lydia?
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm thinking about this from a couple different angles. So, I'm thinking about this in terms of like, well, last week we talked about the difference between um, individual and team sports. And so, in some ways, we sort of alluded to like, well, when one person, if you're in a team sport, one person is kind of maybe not at 100%. You've got a couple other athletes who can on the team that can kind of pick up some of that slack in a way. But when you're an individual, you're still an individual within that team. And you're still wanting to kind of get yourself out of that place to kind of get back into like your full focus. Um, and kind of to your point, like we want to practice using our skills and noticing what's going on before we spiral. And in a way, we can use practices, right, for that so that
Yeah.
if it happens in a game, you're fully prepared. You already know what the cues are in your physical body. You already know um you already know how that spiral kind of starts so that you can nip it in the bud, so to speak, you know.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And that makes me think of a guy named Ken Ravizza. He was a pioneer in the field of sports psychology. He mainly worked with baseball players and softball players, but he also worked with everybody. And I tend to borrow a lot of his work when I'm working with athletes. He wrote a book called Heads Up Baseball, or co-authored a book called Heads Up Baseball. There's a second version, Heads Up Baseball 2.0. So those are both great books to check out. And one of the things he would always talk about when he was working with athletes, with teams or groups, he would always ask people, ask people if they drive, and he would ask them because some of them are high school or maybe even middle school athletes, but then he also worked with Major League Baseball players and just all kinds of Olympians, all kinds of athletes. Um, and he would ask them when you're driving and you come to an intersection and you see a yellow light. You're in your car driving down the street and you see a yellow light. What do you do? He would always ask people, Lydia, what do you do?
Oh, pedal all the way down. We're just going straight for it.
Hit it.
I'm
Yeah.
not waiting. Just kidding.
Exactly.
I gotta wait a whole light cycle.
Exactly.
Joking.
Almost every time, that's exactly what people would say. And oftentimes people would laugh too. Um,
Uh-huh.
now, when you do that, what could happen?
Oh, anything could happen, right?
Yeah.
So, um, maybe I don't make the light, and maybe it's red, but the other one turns green, and then there's an accident. Maybe someone's trying to turn left, and they think that I'm going to stop because it's a yellow light, and there's an accident. Plenty of stuff like that.
Exactly, exactly. So if you're actually driving and you come across a yellow light, it just sort of depends on the situation. You just want to take a moment, maybe even take a breath, and then assess the situation. Look at the intersection. Are there cars coming? How long has the light been yellow? Will you make it? Will you not make it? Should you hit your brakes? Just
Sure.
there's all kinds of
Yeah, if there's a ton of traffic, then maybe you do make the decision to stop at the yellow, right?
right.
But if it's like there's you and it's 2 o'clock in the morning and there's no one else on the road and it's yellow, then you probably take the risk, right?
Yeah. Well, you would want to assess that. Like, is how long did it turn yellow? How long
That's
has it
true.
turned
That's true.
yellow?
Safe
Is
driver.
it does it
You're
feel
safe.
safe?
Don't
Yeah.
drive with anyone listening to this podcast is like, I'm never getting in a car with
Yeah, it just sort of depends. And
anyone.
if we're being honest, a
Yeah.
lot of the times we just floor it, but it's important to assess the situation. And you can think, and his point was that you can think of athletic performance as the same way as when you're driving your car and you come across an intersection. So when you're in a green light, you just go. You don't need to think about it. I mean, of course you want to be observant, look around, all that stuff, but for the most part there's not a lot of changes that you need to make. You're just driving. And then when you come across a yellow, that's when you start to assess the situation and make a good decision, because you don't want to make a mistake when it's yellow. And if you make a mistake when it's red, you're already in trouble. So you don't want to wait till the light is red. So as far as athletic performance, when you're performing well, when you feel good, if you're in a flow state, that's when you're in a green light. And then when you're in a yellow light, that's when there's those small mistakes, or those small situations that could get in your head and could mess up your performance. That's going to be a little bit different for every athlete. So it could be a bad call from a ref. It could be um, maybe a text message right before you step onto the field. Maybe that could start to possibly get in your head. It could be
Mhm.
anything. But when you see that yellow light, it's important to kind of pause mentally, breathe, and use some of your mental skills to get you back into a green light. And if you
Mhm.
wait until it's a red light, then that's when you're already spiraling. And we don't need to think about red lights too much. We more want to focus on the yellow lights and catch those. But just for the sake of discussion, a red light could be, you know, getting benched by your coach, somebody scoring a big play on you, or you, getting mad and arguing with a teammate on the field. So it's those big things that are red lights when that tell you something's really wrong right now. You don't want to
Mhm.
wait till it gets there. You want to catch the yellow light and get back into a green light.
That makes a lot of sense. So you're talking about taking a breath, being able to reset during that yellow light, and kind of just regain the composure
Yeah,
by by means that makes sense for you as the athlete. Something that I would kind of suggest to an athlete if they were experiencing that, those yellow light phases would be, well, the deep breathing, but in a specific cadence, right? So like maybe
sure.
it's breathing in for 4, kind of holding it at the top, or letting it float in a way,
Yeah,
breathing out for 7. Seven's a nice one, right?
sure.
It's a nice long breath out,
Hmm.
holding that out for maybe 5, and then breathing back in, right? So letting it be a little bit of that like cadence, or just normal box breaths, right? Four,
Sure,
4, 4.
sure,
Where we're breathing in for 4, letting it float for 4, breathing out for 4, letting it be empty for 4, then coming back to breathing in. Um, just to allow that system just to become a little bit more neutral again.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. That breathing is one of the most important things, probably the most important thing that you can do to get yourself back into a green light or some kind of calm, focused state. And people might be wondering, why 4 seconds? Why 7 seconds? What does this stuff mean? Uh, so, in general, when you are focusing on inhaling, when you're taking in more air, that's going to raise your arousal level. And sometimes you need that to work for you. If you're going to pick up something heavy, you might see somebody, or you're watching somebody lift a heavy weight or pick something up. You'll probably see them taking some rapid breaths, taking lots of air, and that's going to help give them energy. And then when you're trying to lower your arousal level because maybe you're anxious or maybe you're too excited or whatever word you want to use, then you want to focus on your exhale and take a long, slow breath out, exhale out. So that longer, slow exhale, that's going to lower your arousal level. And then if you're feeling pretty good and you just want to make sure you feel that way, make sure you keep feeling that nice balanced state, then breathing in and out at the same rate, like in box breathing, is going to be really helpful for you. And so breath is so important. If you only take away one thing, if you feel like you only have the time and energy to focus on one mental skill, whether it's for sport or for school or just for life, focusing on your breathing skills is going to be really important.
Mhm. Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
And then, how about for in the moment? So,
Yeah.
in theory, we're kind of talking about this as like going into a competition, or preparing yourself for, maybe you've got some bad news, or you something happened, someone bumped into, I don't know, anything happened on the
Sure.
way to your competition or on the way to practice. And so you're preparing yourself to reset, or you've prepared yourself at halftime. But what about during gameplay? What about like
Sure.
right in the middle of it?
Yeah, yeah, great question. And something like box breathing or taking those longer, slower, deep breaths is going to be really helpful. Maybe as a part of your pre-competition routine, or if you're anxious about a math test, before your math test, or you could probably do it during too, if it's a math test. But during a game when something is much more fast paced, there's a variety of different skills you can use. But just to keep it really simple, at least for the start, breathing is still going to be crucial. So you won't be able to, close your eyes and take slow, deep breaths. But in most sports, there's going to be moments here and there where you can focus on your breath. So even if it's something like motocross or some kind of really fast sport with motorcycles or some kind of vehicle, there's still going to be a moment. So if you're in a motorcycle and you go off of a ramp while you're in the air, that could be a time to take your breath, to focus on your breath. Or if you're in baseball or softball, you're in the batter's box, you're not feeling quite right, you got a yellow light, take a step back, take that slow, deep breath, refocus, step back into the batter's box. If you're a
Well,
sprinter, or go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna talk about track and field.
Yeah,
Like in my experience as a track and field athlete, um, I've definitely had times when uh, maybe there's some jostling of legs or arms. Someone's trying to make a move, or maybe you're even in like a longer distance race on the road, and there's a little bit of like fear or anxiety that pops in. Can I hold this pace? The negative, the longer the race, honestly, like the more time there is for negative self-talk
sure.
to
Yeah,
pop in, right? And your body is really hurting, right? Your body is really trying to hold on to whatever quick pace it is that you're in. And so that feels like one of those moments when you're in it and the decision that you make um, kind of can affect the ultimate performance. Um, and I have noticed from my own personal experience that when I get into that very very aroused, nervous state, racing, if I take the moment to like re-regulate my breathing, focus on the breath, deep breath in, long breath out, um, check my shoulders, check my body posture, um, check just kind of check in and notice where I am and where I'm holding that tension and breathe it out, it really changes my mindset also and really stops that spiral. Um, it's also kind of a fun mind game, just by the way, like because then when you're once your breathing is nice and calm and then you pass by the person who's like hyperventilating, insane. Like it's your own little brain shift to like, oh, I got this, I'm good, right?
sure.
And then it actually gives you a little bit of a boost. um
Yeah.
so I don't know, give it a try. But I have found that like re-regulating breath during on the track or during a road race uh is a solution, is kind of that little game changer
Sure.
for shifting um, out of a negative self-talk spiral.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, and for the most part, it starts with the breath. If you're hyperventilating, if you're tense and you're holding your breath or taking short, shallow breaths, that's going to increase your anxiety, increase your fatigue. It's going to make it harder to think. It's going to start leading to that spiral. But then if you have that regulated breath, you're going to be in a good rhythm. You're going to be much more focused. You're going to feel much more in control. And now if necessary, you can start using your other mental skills, and it's just going to help your performance. Or the breath might be enough already, but that's the breath is that foundation that is very necessary.
Absolutely, because even like once you've sort of re-regulated in that state, then you have the space to be reminded of what those other strategies are, those other
Yeah.
skills are, whether it's affirmations or anchors. So like something that I notice, I'm a much stronger runner than I am cyclist. But I've noticed, and I've noticed this recently, when I'm trying to stay with the group, stay on the wheel of the person in front of me or whatever, and I start to feel like the pain in my legs and just the lactic building up or whatever. I'm noticing myself working on re regulating the breathing. And then I'm noticing that it's easier to come back to like a positive affirmation like I'm still here. I'm in it. I'm an athlete. I'm good enough. Like whatever the thing is going to be to remind myself that I belong and that I deserve to be there, right? And so beginning with that breath then makes it easier to then shift into the other things that you have to do, you know.
Yeah, absolutely. Self talk is very important, or If we want to get technical, we could call it cognition. The thoughts that you're having are important. Um, and in Ken's original book from 1995, the first Heads Up Baseball, he talks about how there's three steps to um, doing what he calls playing one pitch at a time. And that's going to be really important in any sport. It boils down to just being in the moment. But in baseball or softball, you can call it playing one pitch at a time. And he would
Mm-hmm.
say, first, you want to get control of yourself, and that's by taking your breath. And then part two is to come up with a plan, and then that's your self-talk, or that's your affirmation, and it should be a really simple plan. If you're thinking too much, if if you're using too many words, then it's going to complicate things. So if you're a batter up at bat, then you might have a plan like line drive up the middle, or even something as simple as see the ball, hit the ball. If you're in another sport, I competed in weightlifting. My plan was often strong legs or strong back. That's all you need to be thinking. Um, and then step three is just commit to the plan, because so often we might have a great plan, we might know what we need to do, and then at the last minute we might start having some doubts and then abandon the plan, do something else. I used to do that all the time in high school as a wrestler. I would have a plan that I would work on, or have a move that I would work on all week, wouldn't have confidence in it. When the match came, tried something else, and it never worked, or very, very rarely worked. So, step one, take your breath, get in control of yourself. Step two, have your plan or have your self talk, your cue words or affirmation. And then step three, commit to your plan.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I feel like a lot of what you're saying just is very much in alignment with that.
Yeah.
Have your cue words, have your affirmations, take your breaths, and go for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And, kind of a little, in the beginning of our conversation, I kind of or wondered about um, how we can use practice time to prepare for setbacks or to prepare for the spiral, right?
Yeah.
Um, and I do really think that that's a valuable place, because sometimes practice doesn't go perfect. Like, I mean, practice isn't supposed to be perfect, right? Um, and sometimes we do get into that negative headspace in practice. So when that happens, I think it's valuable to check in with yourself to see, what is this about? Where is it originating? What has triggered it? What's making it better? What's making it worse? And that's kind of the time to find some sort of formula solution that kind of works for you, so that were it to happen during competition or in something a little more high stakes, you know how to resolve it. In our previous episode too, we also talked about the use of visualization, and I think we talked about that, right? Yeah, we did. um,
I think
we
so.
might have. We'll talk about this. If we didn't, here it is. So, like, using visualization to sort of um, to see what it is that how it is that maybe a game might be played, or how it is that you might perform on any given day. It's all fun and really cool to like visualize everything going perfectly fine. But the reality is sometimes there are things that aren't perfect. Sometimes there are things that get messed up. So it's also visualizing the setbacks, and then equally visualizing, okay, I'm visualizing that I'm going to spiral and I'm going to feel this anxiety about my performance, or about what other people think of me when I perform this way, or et cetera, right?
Sure. Yeah.
So also visualizing, well, how am I going to respond? And I don't remember where this theory came from. I can't cite it back, but the idea that if you visualized and mentally rehearsed this thing 100 times in your brain, right, then when you have to experience it that one time in real life, you're totally prepared. You're totally prepared to like then take that thing on and control the controllables, or return to your breath, or return to those anchor words, or the mantra or the affirmation that's kind of like pulling you back into where you need to be.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, then I can't remember exactly which UFC great used to say this. It was either George St. Pierre or Randy Couture. It's been a while since I've watched the sport. That's why all my references are old. But
Those guys are like long retired.
yeah, but they're still good. And
Well, I was going to
they,
reference Kobe Bryant a second ago. So,
yeah, but yeah, they would. Whoever it was would mostly visualize success, but then also visualize themselves from a disadvantaged position where they're in trouble, and then they're getting out of that position because that is going to happen. Maybe you're the best in your league or whatever, and no one can score a point on you, but then at some point you're going to keep progressing and the competition's going to get better, and
yeah.
pretty soon you're going to find yourself in situations you weren't in before, and it is really good to be prepared for that. And these skills need to be practiced in your actual practice, all these mental skills, breathing, self-talk, things like that. If you're waiting to a big game to practice it, it's probably not going to go well. It needs to be practiced day in, day out at your actual practice. And then now, when you're in a high stakes situation, when your family, your friends, everybody is watching you, rooting for you, and your opponents, family and friends are booing you and rooting for them. Now you're going to be able to use it in that situation under all that pressure. And there are stages of competency, so it helps to be aware of that. So first there's unconscious incompetency. That's when you're terrible and you don't even know it. You don't know that you're bad because you haven't even thought about it or tried. It's like when you haven't started driving yet and you complain about your parents and how bad they are and how they missed the exit on the freeway, and you're like, oh, you could have made it. There was so much time, but then you start
Back when
driving
they
and
when they stopped and the yellow light was just turning yellow. God.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes parents aren't great drivers, but also also it's not as easy
No,
as
it's
you
not.
think before you start driving, you know? Uh, so that's unconscious incompetency. And then there's conscious incompetency. That's when, okay, now you're practicing and now you realize that you're not good, and it probably feels bad and it's probably discouraging, but you are actually getting better, even though it might feel like you're getting worse. It's just before you didn't know how bad you were, but now you're conscious about how bad you are. And then after that, as you keep practicing, then there's conscious competency. And that's when you're focused, when everything's going right, you can do well. You can do all the things you need to do. You have your hands at 10 and 2 or wherever it is, and your eyes are on the road and you're fully just head on a swivel, and you can drive and everything's great. And then finally, when you keep practicing, you keep that deliberate practice, then you reach unconscious incompetency or unconscious competency. And then that's when you're just driving, you're not thinking about 10 and 2, you're not thinking about like, oh no, I hope nobody hits me. You're just looking at the road, you look before you need to make a turn, you're hitting your turn signal without even thinking about it. Everything's just going, and you don't need to be really focused on what you're doing. So you can have that same skill with sports skills and with mental skills, where you don't need to think. Oh, if I guess if you're a runner, you don't need to think left, right, left, right, left, right. You're just you're just running and you're just taking your
Run.
breaths. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So it just takes practice, and then you get the hang of it.
Yeah, yeah. No,
Yeah.
100%. And yeah, it really is just the practice of that, and really just the putting it depends on how good the athlete wants to be at that thing too, right? Um so I guess it's all up to them.
Yeah, yeah. And then I think we're at our time. But any last things you want to add before we wrap up?
I think nothing else that I want to add for today, but maybe teasing for next time, like to build on this conversation. We might want to encourage athletes to think about where is their motivation coming from? Why are you out there if it's giving you that much worry and fear or causing that much of a mental spiral? Well, let's that tells me that the athlete might need to be reminded of their why. And so I think, maybe in our next episode you might hear us talking about that.
Yeah, sounds great. We'll talk about why. You could be doing anything else. You could be at home playing Fortnite. You could be home taking a nap. So why are you working so hard? So that's a great thing to think about. All right. So Lydia, where can listeners find you?
You can find me on Instagram at liddy.g, or you can find me online at lydiagarcia.net.
Awesome. And then you can find me on at my website, drjasonvonsteets.com. You can find me on Instagram at CBT Sports Psych. And there's the I'm trying out Blue Sky and some other stuff. Yeah, you look around. If you're on another social media thing, you can try at CBT Sports Psych. See if I'm there. But yeah, this was so much fun. We'll you know we'll keep doing this. We'll keep learning ourselves. Hopefully, you'll listeners will learn and get something out of this. And see you next time.
Thanks so much for joining us.
All right, bye.